hello, and welcome to Dojo Live this Thursday. It's not September yet. I think I did the same thing yesterday, August 29th, 2024. My name is Kim Lantis, and I am so excited to be hosting another great show for you today. Today, joining me is co-host Sridhar Padmanabhan. Hey, Sridhar.
Hey, Kim.
Hello,
Thank you
hello.
for having me.
Yes, always a pleasure. And of course, the most important person of the show, Adam Tuttle, our guest today, who is the CEO of Yipy. Adam, I love the name of your company. I always find myself reading it, and I always in my head, I hear it like, Yippee.
Yes, you can't say without being just excited and putting a smile on your face. So that's my favorite part about
The
it.
little jump and the hands in the air.
Yeah.
It's great. Yes, I love it. So, Adam, thank you so much for joining us today. We're very excited to be talking about what you guys are trailblazing at Yipy, and that is standards management, something that I didn't even realize was a necessity in this industry. But before we dive into that piece of the puzzle, we'd really like to get to know you better, hear a bit about your story, your passions, and what sort of led up to founding Yipy, please.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you so much, Kim and Sridhar, for having me on the show. This is so exciting. And when we get to talk about standards management and understand the journey that took me here, I think it's just, to me, it's a regular journey, right? It's really a journey of understanding our industry and looking at hospitality from the inside out and saying, gosh, how do we make this better? So I actually studied at UNLV at the School of Hospitality there. And upon graduating, I worked for a limited service hotel company and, doing my best. And I had the rare chance of opening that hotel and being able to see what it takes, right, to open a property and all of the different angles that you have to understand in order to operate a property like that, with brand affiliation, government compliance, and really just then, of course, like servicing the guest and working with a management company and so forth. After I graduated, I actually joined Four Seasons Hotels, and from there they had me open or move all over the country. I did Las Vegas, Washington, D.C. I opened the Four Seasons at Disney World, which was such a fun adventure, and then back to Vegas. And then somewhere in that journey was this idea of, gosh, I really want to go on my own. I want to be a part of the industry in a little bit broader sense. So I started a consulting company that really focused on standards development, training, and operational excellence, right? Really looking at how do we create the incredible experiences at properties from a staff point, right? How do they deliver those? A little bit of product base as well, but really focusing in on the standards involvement in creation. And as I did that for a number of years, I was really keenly aware of the challenges that hotels were facing regarding standards. And as a consultant was trying to find a tool that could help my clients better keep track of and measure and manage their standards. And then finally realizing, gosh, doesn't exist. I can't go and buy it, and which is what I was looking to do. And so luckily my best friend was an engineer, and we said, hey, and it's the best part is, this poor man took, I think, 8 million app ideas from me and phone calls and politely told me that they were all terrible and that they would never work, and to keep dreaming. And then finally, when we talked about, the core of Yipy, saying, oh my gosh, I think there's something there. And
we can build this.
We can do this. Like, oh my gosh, like you're not crazy. And so that was kind of the birth of Yipy, and now we've had the absolute pleasure of really defining this segment in the hospitality industry.
I love that, because today, you titled today's show Standards Management, the monster you didn't know you were fighting. So you, I guess, in your operational experience as you're going through this hotel, you're like, I have this consistent headache, and maybe even not being able to define it. And then one day, right, it has a name. And then kind of putting the tech behind it. I think that's a very, very exciting story. So let's dive into this trailblazing term, this standards management. I know we got to talk about this a bit pre-show. Standards, ignorantly, I didn't even know that was like a thing. And then as you sort of dove into it, it's like, okay, this makes a lot of sense. Now, I'm assuming most of our audience understands hotel standards, right? As I'm still kind of learning in this space. But Why is this such a monster? Why is this such
Yeah.
a
Yeah. So I think in our industry, when we think of the word standards, I think that we kind of think instantly going toward service qualities, right? Of saying, great, like, how do we go be nice, go do this thing? And I think depending on the type of hotel that you're running, standards have such a different impact on your operation. Now, I agree and believe that no matter what type of operation that you're running, standards are critical to the success of that operation. But as you look at the various segments that exist and the different structures of hotel ownership and operation, as you dig into that, you start to notice there's a huge complexity in standards. So I think it's really important we stop and articulate, okay, what do I mean when we say standards management, what are we talking about here? And the base of this is saying anytime that there's a set expectation, whether that's service quality, product delivery, or any type of regulatory requirement, those fall to standards, right? Like, and so when you look at, okay, who has standards? That I think is where the challenge really starts creeping in, and properties don't really understand like we're saying here, the monster that they're fighting, because they come in such siloed segments that by the time an operator realizes, oh my gosh, there's so much here, they're already over their head. So
I'm
right.
always bringing in like imagery from I watch too much television and movies, I think. But if
Yeah.
anybody out there is familiar with Stranger Things, I think it's the third season where like all the blobbies kind of come together at the end and form a big blob.
That's your standards management monster. That's it right there. I mean, look, so it's interesting when you think of a luxury hotel, right? And it's easy to pick on the luxury segment just because it's a really convoluted segment. But when you look
and
at
we'll say they have the highest standards.
yeah, and they have very high standards, and there's a lot of them. We're talking during a check-in, you can have and face up to 96 standards at a check-in. And when you think of a front desk agent, right, that's brand new, to think like, gosh, how do I do that, right? So we're gonna break this down really quick.
And does this worry ever make you fail? Like you're so concerned about everything you have to remember that you actually do worse?
Yes, you do. Look, you get so focused on doing the checklist that you forget to interact, that you forget to actually engage, that you forget to actually do the very thing that you have to do in hospitality, which is provide hospitable service. You have to be able to provide a meaningful connection with you and the person that's across the counter. And that's every segment, right? That's limited service all the way up to this ultra luxury segment. We have to be good at providing meaningful connections. And if we skip that because we're so focused on learning and hitting all these micro expectations, what ends up happening is you end up just missing, or potentially even worse, you don't even know what they are because there's so many that you just wing it. You just show up and go be nice, right? Like, I don't know, like, but this is what they taught me at Carl's Jr. and I am going to crush it.
And
right?
now you're going to Scarface. Say hello to my little friend.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And you're just going to try it. Right. And so when we look at standards management and we really start dissecting all of the various areas where standards come into a property, we start realizing they're actually quite like it's like an infestation, right? It becomes really prolific. So to kind of give a little bit of context here, if you're operating a property that has any type of brand affiliation, obviously that brand has standards, right? And the brand is going to say, hey, like, you've got these standards and these are things that you need to do. But if you have a management company, they're also going to say, oh, well, these are also our standards. And then you'll have the local county saying, hey, if you're going to offer food of any type or whatever, you have to meet these food handling standards. And if you're with AAA or American Express or Forbes, all of those have their standards. And they're all going to be put into you. And then by the time you actually look back and you think, oh my gosh, there are so many expectations put in this organization. I don't even know what they all are. And then you think of a general manager who has to try to understand, how are not only what are all the standards, but how is every employee informed of them, trained on them, and then measured to their performance of delivering on those to making sure that they can adequately deliver the expectation.
And are there ever conflicting standards? Like,
Yeah.
and how would I prioritize that? Like,
Yeah. Think like, especially when you get into like brand and accolade standards, right? A brand could easily say, gosh, here's this expectation, and then you may be trying to go for a 4 or 5 star, or you're trying to meet some other type of ownership expectation, which is in direct conflict or overlap with another standard. And so you have to define what's the one that we're actually going to deliver to ensure that you're eliminating confusion to your line staff, right? Because if you're saying here's all the standard and you're just delivering these packets, by the way, that's how they're mostly delivered, is through PDFs, right? They're like emailed out and
how
said,
big are these PDFs?
here's, oh, they're huge, right? Like I have one right here. Like I can't show the thing, but like this is a standards packet. One standards packet. And
okay, for those of you who are just listening, that's a clump of paper about 1.5 inches thick, maybe 2
yeah,
inches.
like at least an inch.
And are those what, single-sided or double?
Yeah, these ones, unfortunately for the trees in the forest, is a single-sided
Okay.
print. But that's just
wild.
one. That's one of potentially in your organization of potentially 5 or 6. And so if you're delivering these to your staff and saying, gosh, hopefully you read these, and then they come across, some type of conflict, how do they know which one is the one that they're expected to, which one holds hierarchy? And so we have to be able to create that expectation and set that for those team members.
And so this enter the beast slayer,
yes.
Yipy. All right. How does this work?
Yeah. So like now that's the part, right? This was the light bulb. This was the, okay, I'm working with all these amazing properties. We're opening hotels and we're thinking, oh my gosh, this is a mess. How do we help hotels give order to this? So it's actually so complex, but also so simple. So what Yipy does is we take all of those standards from all of those various sources and flood them into or import them into a single digital library. And in that library, standards are identified by their source. So you can always track and understand, where did this standard come from? Did it come from Forbes, AAA, corporate brand, or did this come from my owner? From there, we assign what we call workflows, which are definitions of how services or products should be delivered or provided based off of the standards and the context there. So very simply put, this is what a check-in looks like. And here are the standards that we want in that check-in. Here's what proper, our refrigerator cleanliness should look like, and safe handling of that, of those items in there, how things should be labeled. And all of those standards from the health department and from best practices are put in there. And then what happens is now you have this, not only do you have this robust library of all of the standards that you've subscribed to or brought in or have been forced upon you, but you also now have them cataloged in context, right? Or in given meaningful direction. And then from there, Yipy actually allows you to then perform internal inspections against those. So you can actually go and start looking at, okay, this employee is doing a check-in. Did they meet those standards? You can take notes. You can, say yes or no, attach pictures, videos, audio files, whatever it is you need in order to create a meaningful inspection of those expectations. And then with that data comes incredible reports that tell you how individual employees are performing, and all the way up to an entire brand that has a global presence of, this is how your operation's running. Here are the areas of focus. Here are the areas that you can just, give so much praise around, right? Your team's doing really well. And you can identify property, region, area, brand performance with data, right? So you can really look and say, this is how we're doing and how we can get better.
Wow, I love this. The consolidation piece, and then there's the visualization behind it, because now you're not just looking at this big printout of many words. It's like, and I think it makes it easier to comprehend, less overwhelming, more efficient, faster, and then changing anything up if you're adding a new standard.
Yes. So think like now that once you have your library established, now when a standard changes, what's happening currently in this world is okay, I'm going to change this standard. Let me update the document. And that standard exists, in 30 different teams. So I need to go and update that standard on all of the documents where that, to the teams where that standard exists, right? Now I have to take that document and email it or upload it to a shared, intranet type device, or email it out and say, hey, by the way, there's a new standard update. And then those leaders then have to take those standard updates and hopefully proliferate them through their organization. They have to then teach and train this new standard to the line level.
I love your very select choice.
Or
hopefully,
we know, like, if anyone's ever worked at a hotel, like, good luck, right? Like, that's not happening. And then what happens with this digital library is, guess what? You go in, you update the standard, and it updates itself in every context that it's applied. So all those teams that have that standard on it, it's automatically updated. It's pushed across an entire organization, and bam, everyone in the world can know that a standard was updated within 1 second of you pressing live.
And then I'm assuming there's some type of confirmation or like a checked, read, done, or
yeah. I mean, like I think that's going to be one of the next stages of Yipy, of course, is as we start pushing out these new standards, is some accountability, right? Tools where you can say, okay, I accept this. And then those that have published those standards can go back and say, hey, property over here in Manila, right? Like, I see that you haven't accepted the standard. I want to make sure you know there was a new standard out. And they go, oh, great. And then they acknowledge it and push it through.
Got it. So many pieces to this puzzle, but I love it. Sridhar, here we are, been back and forth, and I'm so excited. What are you excited about? What are you hearing here today, or how's this line up in your experience?
So actually, I'm very excited that in talking about this, that you worked at the Four Seasons, right? So I'm aware of the Four Seasons, not really have stayed in any of them. Yeah. But I, for example, everything that you're talking about, I can imagine, in the context of a Michelin star restaurant, right? Especially if they have a fixed course meal, right? Yeah. They're definitely going to have, hey, how many people are we seating tonight? In what sequence are they coming? How much staff do we have? Any of them regulars, repeats, special occasions? And then how do you treat them? And, how do you phase them out? And what are your supplies and prep? So that's kind of more easy to imagine as compared to a hotel, right? At the same time, I'm also obsessive YouTube follower of some of these hotel reviews and things like that. And, things that I did not aware of a few years ago, like the Four Seasons, you have the Mandarin Oriental, right? Yeah. And the six senses, I didn't even know about them till not too long ago, right?
Yeah.
And some of these places, they talk about how customer service is delivered in a way that is invisible but anticipatory, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm thinking, when I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, what kind of standards and training do you need that something like that can be repeatable, let alone become a brand? It's impossible for me to imagine this, right? And I can see that you're probably working with bespoke and boutique hotels as well. So I just want to ask you, is this coming out of your Four Seasons? Have you seen it in other places? Or how do the best people translate standards into, a superior customer experience?
That I absolutely love that question so much, because when you look at hospitality, we had a roundtable this last week, and this exact question almost came up, is that there really is two sides. Like, hospitality, while it is magical and this anticipatory service and this just almost feeling like we're pulling things out of the air, it really is a science. There's not a lot of guesswork here, right? There's a lot of prescriptive details that need to go into creating that type of an experience as you develop this. So when you think of, okay, what kind of standards revolve around this, and how are they created? Well, my background showed me, okay, this is how those standards are created, right? And from not only my operational standpoint of having worked in the luxury sector as an operator, obviously gave into that, but also the consulting side, where I got exposed to so many amazing brands, right? We're talking 30, 40 different brands operating on all levels of that hospitality scale, including brand partnerships and so forth. and how they went about taking and adapting these expectations and creating standards to create those magical moments, right? Where they can really create that it's that high service quality. And so when you look at it, it really is making sure, is the deliverer of that, the server or the agent, the concierge, whatever, are they asking the right questions? Are they engaged? Are they providing material? And as you look through, when you think back on maybe some of these bespoke experiences that you've had, and you've walked away thinking, oh my gosh, those were so amazing, I can guarantee you that those amazing experiences were the result of well-practiced and established standards, of them saying, this is what excellent service looks like, sounds like, and feels like. And that those staff members have been trained on meeting those steps along the way, because that's what standards are the steps of service.
So a follow-up question, right? Because, I'm originally from India. I've been taking clients there a lot. And then when you go to, something like a JW Marriott or something like that in India, the amount of hospitality that you receive is overwhelming, right? Yeah. Having lived here in the States for quite a few years, going back to India, you step into the lobby, there are like 5 people, right? And I'm thinking, what's going on? Who needs a doctor? That's my immediate thought, right? I'm not thinking, 5 people. No, I'm like, just everybody back off, right? But there are some brands which, like a Marriott, like the JW again, you have properties, in Europe, in US, as well as in places like India and other places where it's a high touch environment. Standards must be, I don't know, I'm just thinking.
Different.
Like, they have to be different, right?
In India versus
absolutely
Paris might be different.
So different. When you look at standards and how they're adopted regionally and culturally, right? Like going to Dubai at a Ritz-Carlton really shouldn't be vastly different than going to one in, like, I don't know, Boca, right? But they are, right? Just because you have these regional expectations and variations that exist, right? Like, just the cultures are different. And I think the best organizations in the world are the ones that can identify, define, and adapt to those cultural organizations, and then provide meaningful sense of place, right? Like when you show up in India, you want to feel like you're there. You want to feel that hospitality that they have to offer. And it's I actually, one of my least favorite things to do is travel to a hotel in the United States and not be able to tell where I am, based on the room. Like, you open the parking lot window view and go, all right, this is, where am I? Right? Where when we can really transcend that experience and help people, even if we're traveling to, maybe not the most glamorous destinations, but we can provide that sense of place, and we can do that through meaningful standards definition.
I love that. And it's beautiful. You were talking about in the standards, I think your words were identify, define, adapt. Is that what you said?
Yep.
I'm curious as to what that means for Yipy. Like, what are you identifying, defining, and adapting for the future of what's coming? Maybe like right now, what's the input of these standards look like into the system versus what that input might look like later, or anything else? Like, how are you taking advantage of technology?
What's really great about this kind of blue sky project with Yipy is because nothing's there. Right. When we've looked, and I think there's a lot of people that are around the survey space, they're around in the checklist space. As we've looked at Yipy, we think, okay, we need to really look and understand what type of data is available. First of all, what is actually out there? What does standards management even mean? What are the standards that are relevant to us? So with that, right now, the process is we have a form, a structure that gets imported into Yipy, and those standards are then sorted and created, right? And that's done in conjunction with our internal team along with our clients. Eventually, as we get better and we understand best practices, and we understand how different properties, regions, and different service levels adopting new standards, I think that will allow us to further that technology, right? Incorporating AI, where you can say, now you just have to scan your documents, right? And that's just going to create these lists automatically for you. And eventually with Yipy, as we are better at incorporating AI, having a robust platform with, this AI technology, being able to say, hey, create this. I'm opening a restaurant in this area. Give me every standard that I will need for both front of house, back of house operations. And because those expectations and benchmarking will exist within Yipy will be able to provide that for you. It will be able to say, great, here's all your legal requirements based off of the county or region that you lived in. Here's all of the service qualities based off of the service aim that you're looking to go for. Oh, and here is, if you subscribe to these accolades, you can import those standards directly in and create hierarchical responsibilities, right? So the ability to really define what operational success looks like was going to be amazing as the years come and as Yipy gets developed out further.
Amazing.
Well, that's fantastic, Adam. So as people are thinking about setting up either boutique, bespoke, or other, resorts and properties and experiences, people, who don't know or who haven't paid enough attention to the whole operational thing, there is a cost of not having standard or not paying attention to standards, right? Or having an incomplete standards. You must have seen this before you thought, hey, this is a business opportunity. So just asking you, in your experience, what have you seen as cost of not having the right standards?
Yeah, look, an operation that doesn't have their standards in check, they're facing real, true financial costs, right? Are you operating effectively and within standards? So when we look at from the face value, just straight from the top, if you're an affiliated hotel of a brand and you fail your brand audits and you lose ability to run that flag, we're talking millions of dollars, right? Millions of dollars. Now that's an apparent cost. Also fines and fees from regulatory agencies, government, OSHA, food handling, all of those, the impact of that. But then we also talk about efficiencies, right? On making sure what's the cost that happens when a property doesn't properly train their staff, or their staff isn't properly executing or plating things the right way, or caring for their assets in the right way, right? In hospitality, it is so easy to neglect our assets and the things that we're meant to take care of. And if we don't have the standards and protocols and the frequencies put in place to say, hey, we've inspected all of these rooms, here's the thing, and then they fall out of disrepair, we're noticing that there's true financial costs in that. And then on top of that, the financial costs of satisfied employees, people that truly feel connected with, I know what success looks like, sounds like, feels like. I'm connected to it. I'm able to deliver this, and they're able to meaningfully connect with their guests, which then obviously in turn creates repeat business and guest satisfaction, which is the ultimate financial driver.
Yeah, shifting from a sense of overwhelm to a sense of embrace, empowerment.
Yes. Like, think about real quick. I know that I'm talking way too much, but think about when you had to
you're
learn
talking just system. Fine. This show's for you.
Think about when you had to learn a new system, or when you felt a job, and just like how much guesswork that you probably felt, and maybe a little bit of an imposter syndrome of, am I doing this right? Like, I don't know. And then now, once you got like the system down, or once you understood the process, how much more effective you were in your job and in your role. Imagine being able to accelerate that 10 times. Right? Because you're able to say, here's your expectations. Here's what success looks like. Oh, by the way, here's your pictures and videos and audio files and all of that attached to these to really give you structure to it. You can really feel connected with your own sense of satisfaction. And then we can get to the real meaning of hospitality. One of the things that we fight with Yipy is not feeling like a big brother, because that's not the point of it. The point of it is to say, we want to give you the opportunity to digest and understand what these expectations are, so that you can own them, you can personalize them, and then you can turn out and deliver meaningful, personalized experiences in the hospitality in the world, because that's what drives this industry, are those meaningful connections.
Very much so.
I love it. You know, we're at the final minutes of our show today, if you can believe it or not. Time flies when you're having fun. You know, Adam, I think, is there any final words that you would like to leave the audience with in terms of encouragement, or just what they really need to know? And of course, if they'd like to know more about Yipy, or to talk to you about what it is that you've created and continue to create, how they might go about doing that.
Yeah. So first of all, my words of encouragement are that this hospitality industry is an amazing one. It is resilient, right? We've seen it go through the financial crisis of 2008. We saw it meet the challenges of COVID in 2020 and all of those things. And yet it is a flourishing industry. It is a place where there's so much development and adaptation, flourishing here. So it's such a great place to be. And with that, I think that as operators, or anyone that's interested or in this industry, really looks at it, I think that, one of the biggest things that I would encourage anyone listening to do is to focus on your standards, to start looking at it and saying, okay, what are the expectations that we actually have? Leaders, general managers, area managers, do you know what what your frontline staff is being asked to do? Have you really looked and digested of the information that you've distributed, and or lack thereof, right? Like I worked in Four Seasons for a number of years, and I never really got all of the standards handed to me. They were kind of like almost just, this nuance. And so it wasn't until a certain point in my career where somebody finally said, oh, hey, by the way, here's the standards. And I actually got to look at it. And so I think that we've just got to look at our industry and say, we've grown this industry so well over the last, 40, 50 years. Go back to the standards, really look at them. If you really want to get a handle of it, gosh, we'd love to help you at Yipy. You can always find us at yipy.io. That's YIPY.io. And you can always find us there. Obviously, I'd love to connect and engage with anyone on LinkedIn. I love to produce content and have great, meaningful conversations there. But it's such a pleasure for me to not only be here with you and everyone listening, but to be a part of this industry and hopefully make it better.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Adam, for your time today, your energy today, and what it is that you are trailblazing in the industry. Thank you. And Sridhar, as always, thank you also for joining us.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Adam.
You.
Perfect. So stick around, Adam, just a moment before we go off air. But before we do, I'd like to let the audience know that next week we actually do not have any shows scheduled yet. But that doesn't mean you can't go back to dojo.live and watch many of our very great past shows. You can also catch that in the audio version via Spotify, Apple Music, and others. So don't miss out next week, regardless of a live show or not. And we'll catch you the next week following. Until then, stay safe, everyone. Stay hospitable. And have fun. Happy travels. Bye for now.